this session on the People's Emergency Briefing. I'm going to start by inviting Judith to begin with an opening prayer. Over to you, Judith.
This is a Celtic version of the Lord's Prayer, a modern day Celtic version. All-seeing and unseen God, you make your presence known to us when we least expect it. Come to us, we pray, when our need is greatest, and when we've forgotten need and least think of you. Give us peace when we are troubled. Disturb us when we are complacent. When we are locked in darkness, release us. When we are neglectful of the darkness, open our eyes to see the one who overcomes the power of darkness for our sakes. Amen.
Thank you very much, Judith. Now I'm going to ask Ruth to just introduce the session and then to introduce Mark Francis. Ruth, as you know, has been a prophet in this area of environmental crisis. Ruth.
There we are. That is Mark. This is what Mark's like. This is Mark. He's been working with Christian Climate Action for a while. Before that, he was an expert in the coatings on clay roof tiles. And he's going to tell us all about the People's Emergency Briefing and why and how we can run it in our churches. As people know, I've been a climate campaigner for nearly 30 years. And this is one of the most exciting times, I think. This is at the moment really for the churches to be both prophetic and pastoral, and I think we need to grasp this opportunity. So over to you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Ruth. And yes, we can go to the first slide whenever you want, Ruth. I don't suppose I'm an expert, but I'm certainly an enthusiast. I was fortunate enough to go to the National Emergency Briefing in November at Westminster Central Hall, and I sort of followed through that story since then, watching them get to the point of putting together the People's Emergency Briefing. My MP was going to go to the National Emergency Briefing, but had to pull out at the last minute because he had parliamentary business. So in some ways that was disappointing, but he's still a supporter of the National Emergency Briefing and the People's Emergency Briefing idea. And just to follow on from what Ruth said, maybe, I mean, I've seen this film. And I mean, basically, what a gift it is for us at this moment. We're all very, very busy people. But if you're thinking about what are sort of the top 3 kingdom initiatives should be involved in right now, one of them should probably be supporting this in some small way or some large way, because it's such an opportunity to have this professional film available to us. At the end of the session, we'll have some Q&As, but also we'll hear from you about any useful learnings that you've got from coming up against the People's Emergency Briefing, and you will have probably as much wisdom as I have. But we could go to the next slide then, please, Ruth. So yeah, it all started with the National Emergency Briefing back in November, where 1,200 people turned up at Westminster Central Hall. There's 80 MPs in amongst that grouping. There was an introduction from Chris Packham. It was chaired by Mike Berners-Lee, and then there was 9 experts there, technical experts. 7 of them were professors. It went on for probably over 2 hours, so quite long. The picture there you can see was the question and answers at the end of the National Emergency Briefing. And then we can go to the next slide. That just shows you, I think you can see that well. I've got a hashed out area at the bottom, Ruth, but I think everyone can probably see that. Yes, those 9 talks from those 9 experts, they lasted between 11 and 13 minutes. I think some people probably thought there was too much information there that day, but I perhaps quite enjoyed it because I'm a sort of technical person, so I enjoyed seeing the graphs and the numbers. And there was a few quotes, there's many great quotes from those talks, but I'll read out 3 of them. This one was from Mike Berners-Lee, and this was to the MPs who are in the room. If you can't act, step aside, as someone stronger is needed at this time. So that was one of the quotes. And there was a quote from Professor Haley Fowler. It's sobering when you realise that this is the least extreme climate you will experience in your lifetime. And then Chris Packham, he said, we might be a small country, but we're a great country. And I can see lots of good people out there, but the world will be lost by a lot of good people doing nothing. So we need action, and hope comes from action. So there's loads of great quotes, great talks, but there's probably too much content there, really. So in a moment, I'll move away from this slide, but I would say you can see all those talks on YouTube via the National Emergency Briefing website as well. If you only ever watched one of these talks, I would say watch the economics one by Angela Francis, middle bottom of that grid. She didn't waste a single word or a single sentence, and there was nothing. She avoided complicated words that people didn't understand. You know, it was just a very, very straightforward, positive talk about how things can change. But that was the National Emergency Briefing. We're now going to move on to the People's Emergency Briefing. So, or almost move on to that. The National Emergency Briefing team have got, if you like, three aims. One is that there's a televised version of the emergency briefing on all the main channels, and that will cut through public disinformation and perhaps reframe the national conversation. So that's the big ask, the big aim, really, to get this televised emergency briefing. And that is one of the requests of the People's Emergency Briefing. And then the thought is, with the second aim, the government will launch a science-led response. Having had the televised emergency briefing, they'll have to do something. So they'll have to be seen to be leading a science-led emergency response. And then the third point is just that although Britain's a small country, we're a G7 country, by us doing something, it will have an impact globally and can help influence, drag other countries in the right, what we think is the right direction. So those are the aims. And there's the next slide. Thank you. So there's a parliamentary call for MPs to support the prime time televised emergency briefing. So far, 74 MPs, peers and members of the devolved parliaments in Scotland and Wales have signed up. And you can check who's signed up by going to the National Emergency Briefing website. And there's also a link on here which we can use. I'm sure we'll send you these slides afterwards. So there's a link on this slide which can let you check to see if your MP is already a supporter of the request for a televised emergency briefing. So we can go to the next slide. Thank you, Ruth. So there we are. That's just showing there's phase one and there's phase two. We're at the start of phase two now. I've just explained to you, if you like, phase one about the National Emergency Briefing. So now we've got this film, not 2 hours long, very good. It's a 50-minute film. We'll talk about the content of that in a moment. But the idea is that this People's Emergency Briefing goes around the country. It's already, I think, got 2,000 different sign-ups. So this 50-minute film being shown in village halls, in church halls, pretty much anywhere around the country. And the final request of that film and of phase two is to push on towards that televised emergency briefing in the style of those COVID emergency briefings, if you like. So we can go to the next slide. Thank you, Ruth. So, yep, it's a public information film, the People's Emergency Briefing, and they make the point it's urgent, but it's clear and watchable, which is perhaps the difference between this and what happened in Westminster Central Hall, which was perhaps quite dense and a lot of information. And so the aim of the film is to be engaging rather than sort of confusing. So there's the four perhaps obvious points to what you need to do if you're going to have a People's Emergency Briefing in your location. You're going to have to create a team. You're going to have to find a venue, and ideally that's going to take place when your MP is available. It's a really good idea to have your MP watching their briefing. even if they've already signed up to agree to the televised briefing, the feeling is it's really important to get the MP in the room, to hear the emotion, to hear the feelings of the room, to just get a sense of what his constituency, his constituency responds to the People's Emergency Briefing film. So find a venue, but ideally check the date, find a date when your MP is available. Then you're obviously going to have to publicise it well, and you'll know the local channels for that. And then there'll be the film itself, which is 50 minutes long. But a key part of the evening is the second half of the evening, that 1 hour where there's a discussion, a structured discussion, a led discussion about people responding and saying how they feel and moving into perhaps what people can do and should do. So next slide would be good. Thank you, Ruth, which might be so we're now going to watch the trailer, the 2-minute trailer, I think it is, of the film itself, which Ruth is now going to show you.
Top scientists say the environmental crisis needs a response similar to the scale of the Second World War.
We are in the thick of a crisis. We all have to act.
It's getting worse fast, and we're not prepared.
I'm scared for my own life and future, and I'm absolutely terrified for that of my son.
We're facing the potential of an ungovernable state.
It could make our country uninhabitable.
Oh my goodness.
The physics don't care about the politics.
You're being taken for a fool, my friend.
There are plenty of solutions out there, solutions that will make life better. The burning question is, what can we do to make them happen?
It's absolutely bonkers. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Thank you, Ruth. So that was a snapshot of the 50-minute film. Ruth will go back to the slides in a minute. So the way it works in the film is they actually do use all 9 of those experts and clips from those experts' talks from November. But instead of having that 11 minutes, there's probably 1.5 or 2 minutes of clips from the talks at Westminster Central Hall. And then there's a response from the people on the sofas, either normal citizens of everyday citizens of the UK, and also some more famous people like Deborah Meaden, etc. So we'll hear a little clip from each of those during that 50-minute film, and then we get the response from people on the sofas, just trying to juggle with the information, the facts, the truth that they're hearing. So that's how the film works. If you're going to do this locally, there's a lot of information available to you on the National Emergency Briefing website. You all do it slightly different depending on perhaps the skill sets you have, who your audience is. And there's almost an overwhelm of information on the National Emergency Briefing website. So you might have to choose to ignore some of it, which is absolutely fine, because you're going to do this in a way that works for you. But just to say, if you scroll down that page, which means going to the next slide, that's the slide that shows film, you'll come down to the bottom right of the, if you scroll down on the website, you'll come to the supporter toolkit and the screening guide. Both of those are very useful to you. The screening guide, perhaps more important. The supporter toolkit was there first and is perhaps a historical relic. So there may be some more extra useful photographs that you can use in the supporter toolkit, but the key thing for you is the screening guide. We can go to the next slide, please, Ruth. And in that screening guide, there's a wealth of information. One of the key things is advertising and getting yourself on the National Emergency Briefing screening map for the People's Emergency Briefing. So it tells you how to do that. There's invitation templates, there's press releases, there's information about doing the ticketing. And the ticketing is probably quite important. Where I am in Horsham, we're doing 2 films, one at the end of our film festival where we're not doing ticketing, we're just saying free, turn up, free and please turn up. But of course we realise we've got no idea how many people will turn up, and what if we get too many people turning up. Luckily the venue is quite flexible, but it is probably very, very useful for you to know how many people are turning up. So on the screening guide there, it will tell you, it'll suggest you use Ticket Tailor, which is free, and it will talk you through how to use that online ticketing mechanism. You can make the tickets free, but you probably want to know how many people are turning up. So it's got really useful information on how to do the ticketing, information on promoting the film, how you're going to show the film, technical details about how you'll show the film, and then something called a facilitation guide, which is really all about the post-film discussion. And I'll come back to that in a moment. And there's also a thing called the asset library, which has photos and clips and the trailers and things like that. The facilitation guide is very dense, and it's shown there. I'm just going to read through on my piece of paper here some of the things that are covered in the facilitation guide. It's not something we can discuss it after this, but you're going to have to make decisions on how you run the facilitation guide, the facilitation after the film, in your own location. But the facilitation guide after the film has been showed suggests this in the 1 hour after the film. There'd be 10 minutes of initial reactions in small groups for them discussing in groups of 3 or 4. Then there'd be 15 minutes of responses coming from the small groups back into the room, admitting that questions are more important than answers. There'd then be 10 minutes talking about how the televised national emergency briefing is so vital and important. There'd then be a few minutes, probably a few minutes, it could be longer, but I think it has to be a few minutes about talking about what's already happening locally, because you don't want your whole evening to become more than 2 hours long. So I think that part is probably quite condensed. You just admit what groups exist locally. And then there'll be another 10 minutes towards the end for a final whole room discussion, and then 5 minutes for people saying what they might want to do after this and deciding if there has to be a next meeting. All of that is laid out and in fact is scripted in the facilitation guide. So almost anybody can do that if they're happy standing up the front. But you might decide some elements of that are going to be tailored to fit your audience, mostly because the scripted part could take 1 hour and 20 minutes if you use every single part of it. And I'm suggesting 1 hour and 20 minutes after the film is too long. 1 hour is probably as far as you want to go. So all of that is in the screening guide. Thank you, Ruth, for going back to the next slide. And just, okay, and on this, those are direct links to the screening guide, to the facilitation guide, which I just explained at length, which is the post-film discussion. And there's a link to the notice board, anything that's new that's coming up. And there's an example of that on the last slide I'll show you tonight. So it's useful to possibly know that there's something called the NEB notice board, which will tell you, give you updates on what's new and happening. Next slide. Thank you, Ruth. So there's some words about the local screenings again, and just trying to change the national conversation. The point I think I'm making here is that top down and bottom up. Obviously, I think the best outcome is that there is a televised emergency briefing. That's a way to very quickly get this message out there and to recalibrate the national conversation. And by doing that, the public will understand the threat and plan accordingly. If we fail at that, and we have to admit that might be possible, the bottom-up approach means there's going to be 2,000, or probably by the end of this, 3,000 to 4,000 showings around the UK of the People's Emergency Briefing. The outcome of that will be the same. The public will understand the threat and plan accordingly. So in some ways, just having the showings of the People Emergencies Briefing all around the country is very valuable to create that public understanding. Ideally, we would get the televised emergency briefing. If we fail to get that and just do 4,000 showings around the country, the People's Emergency Briefing, that will certainly move the dial forward. So I'm just seeing a question. There are opportunities to have subtitles in the film in English. Yeah, it comes out in 4 different ways, and there is an option with subtitles. So here is a couple of comments for me. There you go. The first one I quite like. When you press the play button, you want the film to play. What do I mean? I mean, it's very easy to get the film to play from Vimeo. If you've got any nervousness about it, there's going to be a team of people there. One of your team will be the techie person, and they will be charged with doing that. It's very straightforward. If you're nervous about it, you'll find somebody in your team who will make it work first time. And of course, the point is you do need a team. You need people welcoming. You need someone who's going to lead the post-film discussion. So therefore, equally, you probably need someone who's entirely confident just pressing the play button on your laptop, connecting it to any systems or TV screens, etc. you have in the building. So that's perhaps obvious. The second thing, and here's my controversial point, perhaps. Sorry, can we go back, Ruth? So should you press the play button? So here I'm saying, why am I saying that? I'm saying if you're in the room at 7:30 and you look around the room and you recognize that everybody in the room is already on the same page as you, you might as well not press the play button and give everybody the evening off. So what I'm really saying there is if you're going to spend all this energy and time and resource creating this event, and I'm saying this to myself as much as to you, we really need to get people in the room who are not on the same page as us and will learn some new information and be maybe slightly shocked by some of the information in the film. So obviously it would be wonderful if 50% of the people in the room were outside our bubble, our eco bubble, our whatever bubble. That's probably a bit of a big ask. So maybe we should be aiming for 30% in the room who will be surprised at what they see. But there's no point, I would suggest, doing this just to, your eco communities that already know we're in trouble. We need to get everybody else in the room as well. Okay, thank you, Ruth. Next slide. So if you want to host a screening, you can go to the bottom of this page. Hopefully it's showing, but there's a button there which says host is hosting a screening, and that's the way you get yourself on the map, and it guides you through then what the steps are to becoming an official host, and those steps are not onerous, and they are very straightforward. And actually, by clicking on that, you're not even committing to hosting a screening, you're showing an interest and trying to understand what a screening might entail. Thanks. So next slide then, Ruth. Okay, but what if you're saying I need a church resource? You might be putting this film on in a church setting, and you might feel you want to sort of have some biblical slant on it, some prayers, etc., etc. So there will be a church resource pack coming out, and that comes out on Monday or Tuesday next week. There'll be a press release. It's supported by the Church of England Environmental Programme, CAFOD, JPIT, who represent the Methodists, Baptists and the URC. Salvation Army will probably be signing up. So I would recommend you make good use of that church resource pack when it's available at the start of next week. If you're showing it in a church setting and you feel you need to sort of wrap that around the screening, then please use it. Next slide, please, Ruth. And then you might say, I want to do this. I'm feeling a bit lonely. I need a local team. I haven't got anybody else in my church who's putting their hand up. Well, one way around this, if you're doing a community screening, is to sign up at 0 Hour, who are building teams based around postcodes, and they'll create a WhatsApp group and connect people together in your town, for instance, Horsham or whatever. And they can also publicize your showing via their postcode mailing list. They've got 40,000 people on their mailing list, so they could send out a mailing saying, we've just started building a 0 Hour WhatsApp group for showing this film in Horsham. Would you like to join that WhatsApp group? So if you're feeling lonely in your local area and you need to build a team, that's one way of doing it. Next slide, please, Ruth. And if you're saying, but I want to see the whole film, please, I'm uncomfortable in showing this film or committing to showing this film without having seen it. I've seen it. It's a very good film. Others have seen it and love it. But if you want to see it, there's a way of seeing it on Monday, the 20th of April, and you can join via that link. I think we're going to send you these slides afterwards. And that will allow you, with no commitment and no need to book, to watch the film online next Monday evening. So that's an opportunity, if you want to see the film in that way, to do so. Okay, I might have finished my slide pack, I think. So I hope that was useful and contains some useful information. I think I'm going to hand over to Barbara, who is going to, we can take questions, we can take useful learnings, we can take anything from you really, because some of you will have much wisdom on this topic probably.
We've already had some questions put in the chat, but first of all, thank you, Mark, for that very clear and concise explanation and hints and tips on how we can do this. Yeah, Mark, you're quite right. Thank you to Mark first. Now then, some of you will be very knowledgeable already. Like Helen Williams, you've been putting lots of informative and helpful messages in the chat. Thank you very much for those as we've been going along. Others here will be just wondering, can we do this, can't we? Now's your chance to ask questions. So either put up your real hand or put up your virtual hand, and we'll hear questions live, as it were. So who's going to come in first? Jonathan Morris, you're the first name I see. I think you can unmute yourself, unless Ruth has still got us all controlled and mute. Stephen Burgess, you've got your virtual hand up. Do you want to come in? We can't see you, but hopefully we can hear you. There we are. Off you go.
Can see me now. Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering where this initiative came from, who is running it, who started the National Emergency Briefing and then the People's Emergency Briefing. Because today was the first day I heard about it at a Eco Church meeting with Bristol Diocese.
Sure, yeah. So two brothers, in fact, Simon and Nick Oldfield, realized they had to do something, and this is what they've done. So it's not from any organization. One of the reasons why perhaps their website is reasonably difficult to navigate is because they're doing everything on the run a bit. They've just about, I think, got 2 paid full-time people now supporting them, maybe one more. But yeah, nothing existed really, before their idea came into their heads sometime before November. I don't know when, but so 2 brothers went for it and said, we have to do this, and that's why we're in this position. So
Green Christian are supporting this now, are they?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Dave, can you unmute yourself? Dave Mitchell.
So my question is, obviously the big aim is to get your MP in the room, and I understand why, obviously. But I imagine a lot of MPs are quite busy. How, if we try really hard to get our MPs in the room and they just refuse or they're too busy, do we go ahead anyway?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a fair question. I think you give them every opportunity to be in the room. And if they don't want to be in the room, we're using the bottom-up approach then, where we're educating our town as much as possible. And then maybe at the end of that evening, one of the actions is the people in the room will send letters, will send cards, will send requests to the MP, trying to get them to support the televised briefing. So I think that's perhaps the second best approach, and that's what we'd have to do.
Mm. Yes, and there will be some MPs, Dave, like my own, who would just refuse point blank. But it's still probably worth showing the film and invite councillors along instead, perhaps, or other, important people in your community, if you know that the MP is just not going to be a no-go. Okay. Mary Huntingdon, if you've managed to unmute, I think. Do you
I
want to come
have,
in?
yes. I don't know why it keeps saying the host won't let you unmute, and then I don't know.
It's
Anyway,
because Ruth is controlling things.
yes. A couple of things. I noticed somebody in the chat said about aiming for Friday or Saturday, and I think that's true in terms of the MP, because often they're in Westminster and then come home at the weekend, sort of thing. So that might well work. The other thing is that I belong to a group called Common Green, and we're a sustainability, biodiversity, community energy sort of organisation. And when I suggested we try and get it on a local church, one of my colleagues said, well, we'll have to make sure it's not political. So that's what I'm asking you. Is the film political, or is it, are we don't want to be telling people what they should be voting or anything like that, but so that's that. The fact that you can watch it next week is rather good, because I can tell her to watch it first.
Yeah, so I'd suggest it's not political in that it relies on those snippets of those 7 professors and other leading economics voices giving a fact-based assessment.
Yeah.
So I don't think it appears political in that sense at all. Although obviously with a small p, you might argue, we're trying to move the dial on the discussion. So.
Okay. Yeah. And also I went to a Caritas briefing the other night, which was about engaging with politicians. It would be nice if all these churches will join together. I think you mentioned CAFOD a bit earlier, somebody. Because that's my background is from the Diocese of Brentwood, so we had a Caritas meeting about engaging MPs, and Sir John Battle was saying they don't respond to emails. You've got to get them relationally in the room with you, with a small group of you to talk about your concerns or whatever. So I think getting them there is really important, so that not in a confrontational way, we can talk about what we're worried about, sort of thing. But yeah.
Thank you, Mary. I just realised what I was going to read to you at the end of my slides, and I'll read that to you now because it's what Chris Packham said at the end of the film. It's a massive relief to hear this all in one place from experts. We're in a difficult place, but the experts point out that there are solutions available. And of course, many people are already working on local action in their communities, but we know that we need MPs and governments to step up and move faster. Polls show that 83% of us in the UK want more climate action, and MPs underestimate this. So therefore, now is the time to ensure that we are all asking our MPs to support the televised emergency briefing. This is the moment. Sorry, I just thought I'd add that in because I forgot to include it.
No, that's really helpful, Mark, and very relevant to that question. But the party political in particular bit, again, one way around that is to invite all councillors of all parties. So you're being totally non-political then. Liz, no, Helen and then Liz, because Liz's hand doesn't seem to work quite. So Helen first.
I just wanted to say that I am a councillor, but that's nothing to do with this. Chris Packham does actually say to all the MPs in Westminster, saying, please forget your differences, your political differences, forget them for now. We're one species, and our only way of salvation is acting together and forgetting all those other differences. Just focus on this.
Very good, Helen Skinner. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you for that. And Helen Burnett, let's bring you in, who I was referring to. There's 2 Helens there. Helen Burnett. Are you having problems unmuting?
Got there. Thank you. That's great. Yeah, I would say it's definitely not party political, and that's the answer to give to people. Of course, it will be political with a small p. I have a question about follow-up actions, because we were discussing this in my local XR group, and we've done some people's assemblies, and there were 2 things that cropped up. One was, don't send everyone off for a cup of tea after the film.
get them to react immediately because it's visceral, and you don't want to lose that kind of moment where, for those who've not been confronted with this before, they have been. And so really zoom straight in, maybe give them a cup of tea later on, but at that point, maximize the impact by getting people to turn to their neighbors or whatever. But the real question, and it may be in all the amazing resources, is what are the things that we're invited to ask people to do? I mean, again, we were discussing this, and I was talking about food security. You know, are the suggestions around streets getting food secure, those sorts of things? Are the practical things that people are offered? Because we want people to go away mobilized, don't we? And feeling that they have agency, as well as writing to their MPs. And presumably there is a template for that, because if you can hand everybody a template, they're much more likely to send it. And then the MP gets lots. They, you know, if they get lots, they have to start taking notice, apparently.
So there's a QR code that people should receive when they arrive, or it could be on the screen, which includes a pre-film questionnaire and a post-film questionnaire when you get home, and also some things that you can do. That's quite nationally slanted at the moment and is in its very embryonic form. But there is that. There is also the idea that local groups will have people will be pointed, signposted to what local groups are doing during the film. And the big question is whether you take 1 minute over that or 15 minutes, giving local groups a chance to stand up and say what they're doing. So I think each location is going to have to decide how they best use that opportunity. And I think it's still, people are learning what to do in that stage of the evening at the moment. But you're right, we shouldn't waste it, and we should suggest that there will be a follow-up at some point afterwards. The National Emergency Briefing says you should try and organise a meeting 1 to 2 weeks after you've shown the film for everyone to come back together again. When our group read that, that was reasonably deflating, because we put all our energy into trying to organise the film and everything, and also a subsequent film evening 6 weeks later. We thought, So what we're doing in Horsham, we're showing the film once, we're showing the film again 6 weeks later, and then we're having, after that, a let's all come together and try and work out what this means for us in Horsham evening. I don't know whether that's the right way to do it. Every local place will come up with their own approach, I think.
Yeah. Okay on that, Helen. Just to say that the Green Christian page on this People's Emergency Briefing is your go-to place for, certainly for church resources, and will be kept up to date. And the church resources will be there as soon as we have them. Right. Liz, I'm going to bring you in because you kind of got jumped back a bit with your hand being different. So Liz Spencer. We can't hear you at the moment.
That's right, there. Okay. Okay, fine. I've just had a Zoom previous to this with a small number of my local constituents, because we kind of hooked into this quite early on. So we did go down the route of going, yes, we need to engage the MP, get a date. So in a way, I'm at the head of the game, and we're fortunate, I'm going to say now, that our viewing isn't until June the 12th, because now we're looking at all the material. But I want to just to perhaps speak to the point about getting an audience there that isn't, as I say, just from the usual suspects, because I think this is so important to it. And when we were, and I have gone through a lot of the resources quite carefully, and Mark mentioned the questionnaire, which is quite critical, and the follow-ups, but also an aspect, if you've got people there, you know, who aren't like ourselves, already engaged, already understanding about it, one aspect of it is the real worry, anxiety that it might generate on that evening. And they've also, because the two brothers that Mark also mentioned, they've done a lot of work with the Majority Project, Rupert Reed, whom a lot of us are familiar with, and the Climate Psychology Alliance. That's why the sort of facilitation and who can deal with that I think is quite critical. I'm going to be suggesting, and it's an idea, I took from the Way of Life meeting we had in January. Was it February, George? Can't remember now. Because the follow-up questionnaire, they're trying to gauge people's responses. It is aimed to have an emotional response. So, Mark, you're quite right. It's before you go in and see the film, they want you to fill in this sort of brief little survey. And afterwards, they want to do that. And one of the questions is asking people, do they feel, or how do they feel informed, concerned, hopeful, motivated to act, on a scale of. And it made me think of what we did at the Way of Life Day, when we ended up with a moment where we had a quadrant of crosses in which we were allowed to just place, we did it with stones, this one you could use post-it notes, what hopes do you have? What fears do you have? What are you angry about anything? And perhaps offer that to people as a way of trying to hold people gently in a way, if they've just come out of the film discussions feeling, terribly worried about it. So it's one small thing. And the other thing I just wanted to comment on,
just
it's not really a
quickly,
question.
because we've got
Yeah, very quickly. My group has said very clearly they wanted to make sure it's absolutely non-political and also very secular. It is being held in a church, but that speaks back to wanting to get as broader outreach as possible and people getting there. So that's it.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Mark, any comments on that?
No, I mean, thank you for your comment. Yes, each group will decide how to respond and handle that emotional overload in their room. And I'm just reflecting back on that piece I read from Chris Packham. It's a massive relief to hear all the information in one place and actually know where you are. And also, there's a lot of solutions that the experts are saying we can take on board. So I think it possibly is both. Well, it is both positive and negative. So.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. James, can you unmute yourself, please? And Jonathan, would you like to get yourself unmuted ready? It's taking a little while. Right, James.
Yes, we're just I'm actually seeing it tomorrow night. It's the local XR group that has set up a screening for people who are going to take initiative to then have screenings in their own area. So it's an invited group. So that's another way of doing it, actually, so that you ripple it out. So an invited group of people who have got established contacts who will then take it forward. So we're doing that tomorrow night. And this whole rippling out thing, just to follow on from that, I mean, I've been pushed in terms of national church organizations. If there's national assemblies that are coming up, to push your national church to show it at the assembly, even if it is as a fringe meeting. I'm pushing quite hard with the Baptists. They're pushing or they're not responding, but I've just looked up the Methodist annual meeting is in June, July, end of June, beginning of July, and the United Reform one is in July. And of course, Church of England as well, sort of diocesan level. That is another way in which those gatherings gather together generally people who are in leadership or are fairly dynamic within their churches. They are the places where we also need to get it so that it ripples out as much as possible, even if people are seeing it 2 or 3 times. So I feel that's a really, really important way of getting it out nationally if it doesn't happen on a national broadcast.
Thank you, James. A couple of really good ideas there.
And it's a good point you make. I mean, I thought we were going to be showing it once in Horsham, and then quite quickly we realised we were going to have to show it a second time, and then who knows? I think the rippling out is going to happen, isn't it? And we're all going to be possibly showing it 3 or 4 times. We will see. Yeah.
Jonathan.
Yeah, just some sort of practical feedback. We've set ours up. It's organised with the church, with another Green group locally, and with MP Watch on the 14th of May. The MP actually can't make it, but we decided we'd stick with that date anyway. In terms of the organisation, I think our group feels like the television is really important. It may or may not happen, but it would take a long time for it to happen anyway. And in terms of the evening, we're very much going to focus on what people can do locally. And to facilitate that, rather than have local groups coming along and talking, we're going to have local groups coming along and providing information about what they do, whether it's tree planting, whether it's litter picking, whether it's, all sorts of things. We've got somebody who wants to come along around a community energy company, somebody who's particularly, or a group are particularly interested in food resilience with the allotment group. So, but we're not going to waste time talking about that, but in a sense, give people a chance to go to any particular stall that they may be interested in. We also decided not to go down the route of ticket tailor, just simply because that can be an obstacle to people coming along. So I don't know, we got a venue that can cope with 60, but if more than 60 turn up, which we don't think is likely, we're a small town, 5,000 people, but we can go to the church, which also has screens and a projector, which is literally 30 yards away. So that would be covered from that point of view. And in terms of trying to get people involved who don't normally come along, we're contacting all the local youth groups, the local sports groups. I mean, our local football team, they weren't able to play football from December until middle of March, simply because their pitch was flooded the whole time. So I think kind of getting in people like that who may not really have sort of thought about it in terms of how it's impacting their kind of day-to-day recreation, etc., is quite important. But we really hope that what will come out of it will be possibilities for people to get involved locally, because in the end, a television program will be really good, but if people watch Netflix, they watch television programs, they watch all sorts of different things, and I don't know how much impact that will have. But if we can engage people locally and get people thinking about how they can contribute, how they can get involved, and give them very clear opportunities and pathways to get involved, we think that may have a kind of more long-lasting impact.
Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, good to have those creative ideas of getting other people in. Brilliant. And in amongst all that, will you still try to put pressure on your MP after the event by people?
Yes, I mean, our MPs are very sort of supportive. He's a good liberal person and he does all the right things like the CLNAN bill. But, MPs notoriously don't turn up, or something crops up at the last minute and they can't make it. Or, I mean, I went to Westminster for the lobby, having booked an appointment to see him, and he was held up in Westminster. They're always desperately busy. So I wouldn't hold my breath on an MP. It'd be nice if they can turn up, but, life goes on without them, really.
Absolutely, Jonathan. Yeah, somebody Mary in the chat is suggesting getting other local groups like the WI and local societies to show. So the idea of getting other organisations involved is obviously a good one.
We've got town council involved. They're coming along. We've got our local representative from Somerset Council, the Unitary Authority, is coming too. So we've got other political representation.
Sounds like you're doing a really good job, Jonathan.
Well, we'll see how it goes on the night, really. I'm a bit nervous about the film, if I'm really honest, because, I'm not even sure I like the title People's Emergency Briefing, but, if it had been my choice, I'd have gone for local emergency briefing as opposed to national emergency briefing to put that focus on. I just think the word people's is...
Hey-ho, that's what it is.
That's what it is. You're absolutely right.
Okay, Helena.
I think Jonathan's answered some of my question, but obviously we alluded to the point that there's a danger that a majority of people that actually come to the screening will, be people like us, people who already understand the threat. So what can we do to attract a wider audience? And I think, as Jonathan said, actually, I know we are with People's Emergency Briefing, but it does seem that it's not a particularly enticing or inspiring title. So has anybody got any other tips? I mean, Jonathan was saying about actually contacting local organisations and things, but has anyone got any tips, or anyone who's already shown the screening? What did they find in terms of the audience that did come to it? Was it mostly people who were already in the know, or did you have people who really were there, to find out?
Okay, anybody want to wave a hand to say that they got something to respond to Helen on that? I can only see.
Just running it in a church, right? I mean, most people that go to church are not not terribly green, are they? So running it in a church and really encouraging your church leader to encourage the whole church family to go get your vicar. I'm just trying to organise one in my local church, and I've asked the vicar when she is free. It's more important she's there than the MP is there, I think, to actually hold it, encourage people to come, make sure and show the authority that this is what we're taking seriously. So yes, running in a church and encouraging people to come from that.
Yeah.
One idea.
Good. And Veronica, have you something on this particular topic? You got your hand up.
Yes, I know from we're going to be showing the film on the 26th of April in our church, and but I think it recommends that you don't invite children under 16, so it's 16 plus. But also, I feel as though we've got thankfully a lovely lot of children within our church, but I think it's important that we invite the parents of those children, because they have most of our environment group are in the older age range, but it's the parents who have most investment in the future for their children. So I feel as though they are very preoccupied with earning a living, bringing up their children, and perhaps they have missed out on some of the information that we're familiar with. So I would recommend aiming for the parents of young children.
Very good point, Veronica. Thank you. Thank you. And Richard, this is going to be the last question. I'm so sorry, Mary. You did come in with a question earlier, though. Richard, last question is with you.
Oh, thank you. Fascinating, very interesting discussion. So this is a very quick technical point. I hope we are booked to show this in church shortly, and we don't have Wi-Fi. I'm assuming you can download the whole thing to your computer and play it. You don't rely on cables or anything.
No Wi-Fi required. It'll be on the computer, and then you'll take the computer to the site, to the location. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. That's all I needed to know.
That was very short and quick. Thank you, Richard, for that very practical question. Mark, having listened to all that, is there anything you'd like to sort of concluding kind of remarks or thoughts that you'd like to share with us?
I think we're all gonna possibly use this in subtly different ways, but it's such a gift. It's such an opportunity. As long as we use it in some way, it'll be that bottom-up approach. We'd like the televised briefing, absolutely, but let's use it in a way that works for our local community, and let's not let this opportunity slip by. So yeah.
Right, thank you. It has been enormously helpful. I'm just going to end this session with a prayer. Then we'll have a couple of notices and thank Mark, and then we'll keep the link open, as I said, for 10-15 minutes after 8 o'clock. So if we could just a moment's silence for a prayer. May the God who shakes heaven and earth, whom death could not contain, who lives to disturb and heal us, bless us with power to go forth and proclaim the gospel. And in this case, the gospel that means we do our utmost to bring before the people in our locality the dangers of climate change, but the positives of what we can do to address and make it less dangerous than it could be. Amen.
Amen.
So before I thank Mark, can I just mention that next Wednesday, the 6th of May, we have a Green Christian workshop on 1,000,000 acts of hope, which is kind of related a little bit to this, that we're going to do positive actions. And if anybody here would like to know more about Green Christian, tomorrow night we've got a Zoom meeting for our members to find, or anybody else who doesn't know much about us, to come along and find more about what we do. So I just want to end by giving Mark a huge thank you for filling us in with all the information and then being here to respond to our questions. And I'd like to thank all of you here who have shared what you're doing and what you plan to do, and to wish you all Godspeed with the meetings that you are planning and are going to arrange. And do feed back to us at Green Christian how it goes and what you're doing. So good night to those who are going now. We'll stop recording and we'll still be here to chat if you want to stay on. Bless you all and good night.